Mr. Hanna,
Mr. Evans.
do you have the details of the mission prepared before we start recording?
I do.
Okay, so how about you tell me what was James Bond's assignment before we start?
On this mission, Bond is confronted by his past as he confronts the mastermind behind everything that has led up to this moment.
This is Spectre. And welcome to another fun mission. Bond Never Dies. I am your agent, Jeremy, along with my agents by my side, Travis Hanna.
Ba-da.
And as you know, we are getting closer. Actually, we're one movie off for the final movie, No Time to Die.
That's right.
It's coming out in April.
Yep.
I think it's April 19th, I want to say.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're recording this in February.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just a couple months away, man.
Right. Now, what's crazy about it is that this was the whole goal through this whole show. Just to let people know, when we started doing this show, our goal was we were just going to go and, the last episode was going to be, when the newest Bond came out. I think that's what triggered it. When we heard there was a new Bond coming out, I was like, let's go ahead and let's do a Bond podcast and get to that last episode. So I'm actually proud of ourselves for getting there.
100%.
It has been a long road.
Yep, almost 2 years.
Mm-hmm. I want to thank everybody that has been listening to us and sticking with us. If you're new to this, don't worry. I will repost all 23 episodes so people can just know where we come from. But to really help you guys out, I recommend go listen to episode 0 because that episode's hilarious because it's totally going to probably be a different list by the time we give you our top 5.
Right. So in that episode, we lay out, before we go back and watch everything, what we remember from James Bond, what our top 5 Bond girl is, what our top 5 James Bond movies are, gadgets, cars, just some of the things. And then as we've been watching, that top 5 list is probably going to expand when we go back and revisit it because there's other things that we noticed. Yeah,
so just to give you guys a heads up, after this episode, we will have the No Time to Die talk, but this is just a review talk. This is not like the episode you're going to be hearing right now as we kind of give you the play-by-play of the whole movie. But there will be an episode of like that later down the road.
Once it's released and everybody's had a chance to see it.
Yeah, then we'll do that. Then, towards the fall, we go right into our top 5 of everything. So that's where the nitty-gritty gets in because me and Travis haven't really discussed our top 5. It's funny because each movie you'll talk about like, okay, I like her. I would put her in my top 5. I would put this girl top 5. I don't remember who all I said I put in my top 5.
We said that 23 times.
Yeah. And so it's going to be exciting just to sit down and, break it down what we think fits, doesn't fit. Might be some battle, but the good part is, it's going to be entertaining and really fun as we like give you the ins and outs of how we came to this decision and all that kind of stuff. So with that, we get into the second to last, Spectre.
Yep. Now,
this is following up right after Skyfall. That's also behind Quantum. That's also behind Casino Royale. This is actually Daniel Craig's final movie, we thought at the time.
Right, and it really seemed that way if you watching it, because everything that's happened to him since he took over as Bond is coming to a head in this movie. Even so, in the intro scene with the song, you see pictures of Vesper, you see M, and just a bunch of things that have happened to him since he's been Bond.
So, before we wrap this up, if you can say one word about this voyage of Daniel Craig's movies, what's that one word?
Let down.
Okay.
Because I like Daniel Craig as James Bond so much. The stories, I feel, were a little lacking.
Okay.
Or too long, or like I feel like they could have done more, and they just didn't.
My word is slow.
Okay.
Everything was slowly building up to this movie, and I think it could have gone a little bit quicker. And you can tell too there was a lot of misdirection in a way of how people wanted to film Bond. The first director was the director for GoldenEye, so you kind of got that pace of what you saw from GoldenEye. Then you got Quantum, a movie that was going like too fast, like you were getting Mission Impossible too fast, and then you're getting to this movie and Skyfall, same director, that's really focusing more on character development than actual like the pace and the action of this movie. So there's a lot of diverse in the way this is filmed. So let's go ahead and get started. So this opening is a little bit different because we don't really get a lot of openings where it starts out with a giant parade. The Song of the Dead parade, that is.
Day of the Dead.
Day of the Dead, sorry. Yeah, Day of the Dead. And this is actually a really awesome setup. Like, it is beautiful. Everybody's in costumes. It's a fiesta. Everybody's having a great time. It was a really cool set. But right there, we start noticing two people walking in the opposite direction heading into that room. And what did they look like, Travis?
You had one guy dressed in a black suit with like bones all around, so it looked like he was a skeleton. And then he had like a skull mask, and then a woman in a purple dress.
Yeah, and so they were basically looking like they're heading to this hotel and heading up to this room. And when they decided to take off their outfit, we noticed that it was James Bond right here on the mission. So at this point, Bond was about to make out with this girl, but then he says, hold that thought, I got something to do. And he just goes ahead and just walks off the side of the building.
The best part about this scene is he's wearing a suit, and when he takes the suit off, like, we don't see him take the suit off. We're watching the woman, like, thinking that they're about to bond.
Yeah.
And it cuts over to Bond, and the suit is off, and he's wearing another suit underneath.
You know, he must be burning up.
Right?
I'd be burning up. And so he decides to take a walk off the balcony. Well, not off the balcony, but the side of the balcony, and he's walking on the side of the building. Now, what's cool about this scene, I love this scene, because you kind of get in like a more of an overlook of what's going on in the background as he's making his way over there. That's just a beautiful setting for that. But we notice Bond has kind of an interesting gun. I don't know how to describe this gun, Travis. How would you describe it?
It's a carbine that's kind of folded up, and then on there he has a laser that also acts as a listening device. So when I say folded up, he's got a bunch of little parts that he's got on him, and he's slowly kind of piecing it together and stretching it out, and it's got a collapsible stock, so it's really small, but by the time he pulls it all together, you're like, oh, that's a legit gun.
Yeah, so who is Bond going after? Well, if you remember at the beginning, that we didn't mention quite yet, he was actually following a gentleman in an all-white suit.
Right.
And basically, he saw him go in this building, so he decided to, make a shortcut. So now Bond is actually on the opposite side of that building, kind of just, scouting them, keep an eye on them, has a gun aimed at them, and waiting for the right moment to shoot. But also, too, he can actually hear the conversation going on in there.
Right. It's an actual existing technology where a laser can be focused on a room or through glass, and it picks up the sound waves and transmits them back into an earpiece, which is what he's doing. And these guys are talking about they're going to blow up a stadium. It's a big day in Mexico. He's in Mexico City. Mm-hmm. And after they're done blowing up the stadium, they talk about taking care of the Pale King.
Yes, the Pale King, yes.
And so Bond decides that in order to stop them from blowing up a stadium, he's going to take them out right now, and then actually ends up shooting the bomb that they were going to use.
Yeah.
Which blows apart the side of the building, causing it to collapse down on top of where he is. And he tries to escape, but it just knocks the roof out. And hilariously, he ends up on like a love seat, A-okay.
Right, but no problem. But apparently, the gentleman that he was going after actually made it out okay, with a little bit of blood on the side of his face.
The guy in the white suit.
Yeah. And our first chase begins. So
That's right.
So they're running through this giant parade, just going through everything. And it's interesting, too, because, like, you can see on certain parts where, like, they're walking for a minute, then they're running, and they're walking, knocking over stuff. This is a pretty long chase scene.
It is. And while this guy is being chased, he's on a cell phone saying, meet me in the square, which this parade is all culminating into this giant open area where there's floats and effigies of giant skeletons. Everyone is dressed up. I'm pretty sure most everyone's familiar with the Day of the Dead and the sugar skulls and all that kind of thing.
So let's pause for a minute and talk about something that you mentioned before we started this recording. Is how interesting is it that you saw a building just collapse, and no one got hurt.
Well,
per se.
What's funny about this is he's on the rooftops and you can see a bunch of people all around down below. The building blows up. Bond survives. He runs out on the street and it's dead, like there's nobody there. But then they go one street over and the parade is still going.
Does that mean the music's that loud that they couldn't hear it?
That, or just for the sake of the movie, they were like, just ignore it.
No one's gonna question it. Here we are.
So this helicopter shows up in the square, and the guy in the white suit is trying to get to it, and that's Bond had actually lost track of this guy. His name is Marco Sciarra, by the way. Sciarra. And Bond actually lost track of him. Had it not been for the helicopter, he wouldn't know where to go. Mm-hmm. But Bond ends up jumping in the helicopter with him and is fighting him as it's taking off. Him and the pilot. So the helicopter starts like going crazy over this crowd in this huge square, and it's an interesting fight scene. It's not super great. Bond ends up eventually kicking out the guy in the white suit just before stealing a ring off his finger, and then the helicopter pilot shoots a flare into the back, trying to get Bond. Bond ends up eventually killing the pilot and throwing him out of the helicopter. And then he flies off, and as he's flying off, he looks at the ring, and it's got an effigy of like an octopus on it.
Did we also mention he almost crashed it? Like he kind of almost dipped
right.
it. Yeah, he almost dipped
right.
it, right?
So the helicopter pilot actually took it straight up into the air, and it stalled.
That's it. Yeah.
And Bond took the helicopter pilot out as it was falling back down, and then managed to get it flying right just before it hit the crowd below. You're absolutely right.
Right. And just we're making this really quick, but that scene alone is a good 10 minutes. It's a good 10-minute fight scene of them fighting his helicopter. Kudos to the pilot at the time, at that moment, keeping the helicopter pretty steady during this whole fight.
Well, I mean, this helicopter is like doing barrel rolls, and it's a pretty interesting fight scene. Mm-hmm. It's kind of it's more interesting to watch the helicopter do maneuvers than it is to watch Bond fight the guys.
Yeah, I agree. So after Bond is about to fly off, White Travis said he noticed the ring, and it looks like a bit like an octopus. And this leads into our opening. And our opening is actually not called Spectre.
No, it's called The Writings on the Wall by Sam Smith.
And this is another song on top of Octopussy that didn't get their own theme name.
Right.
And so Travis, you really like the visuals. So why don't you talk about the visuals real quick before we talk about the song?
So what's really cool about this is going back to what I liked about the last intro, and is that it shows us what's going to be happening later on in the movie through all the visuals. Also, I like that there's some gunshots or some guns being fired, and the smoke from the bullets are actually like octopus ink. Mm-hmm. So it's just black, and it just like fills up the screen and transitions into the next. Mm-hmm. Also, it's very reminiscent of, I would say, more the 90s era Bond, in that there's a lot of women. It's not just silhouettes, but it's actual women, and they're wrapped up in tentacles from the octopus, and then in the background, like, it's just visually, it's really interesting.
Very, very, honestly, Travis, out of all the stuff, that's probably the most sexual things that you saw in a Bond opening like that, with the octopus tentacles and all that stuff. A lot of the Bond girls, you have them either like sitting down posing, or they're jumping or doing like other tricks. Like, if you remember from The Spy Who Loved Me, you had girls doing everything, jumping on trampolines, swinging on the gun, So we're seeing something similar like this one. Now, one of the things I give them credit for daring is adding the octopus. That's a little daring. We never had like a creature be the star of this, along with the main villain being the leader of this, and we're seeing kind of like a little preview of what he looks like, right? Followed by death. Death is really the theme of this because they really illustrate that Bond. This might be Bond's last mission. This might be his farewell, his goodbyes at the time.
Well, and it's also showing glimpses of past villains. Vesper's in here. But one of the coolest visuals is they show the octopus. Well, they show a bunch of people standing around pillars. The pillars turn into octopus tentacles, and then you see the giant octopus, and you pan down underneath it because it looks like it's kind of standing. And when it comes back up, you see a man's head with a skull.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
so it's death, and that like I said, you watch the intro, and then you watch the movie, and you go back and watch the intro, and there's so many little details that you're just like, oh man, they did a really good job foreshadowing the movie.
But I didn't like the song.
I did not like the song.
I did not like the song. I think the song was a little bit. What's funny? The song kind of represents how the pace of this movie is going to be in a weird way. But at the same time, the song's a little bit too falsetto for this.
Yeah.
Do you get the falsetto kind of feel to this? I just feel like it's a little bit too much for this, for what it is.
Yeah, I kind of expected it to be more.
I thought, honestly, Travis, it was going to be more seductive. I thought it was going to be a more seductive song just because of the tentacles, and it's supposed to be this kind of creepy kind of feel. I don't know why. I just got that feel of it.
Well, even I think if it was a little more upbeat or rocky, like a rock song,
okay,
it would have been good.
Okay.
But yeah, I just wasn't a fan of the song either.
Okay. I wish I can think of an artist off the top of my head that would fit better for that, but that'll be later in a special segment that we'll have on our things of like our top 5 artists that we like to see do an opening and whatnot. And so, but
Billie Eilish is supposed to do the next Bond.
Yes. Yeah, so we'll see what happens
see how
with
that goes.
Yeah. Because my theory is, if you've been paying attention to all our episodes, or is this your first time, my theory is, if you really don't like the intro, you're probably not going to like the movie. And so far, I want to say I've been hitting it pretty well, and some I haven't hit really well.
You've hit more than you haven't.
Okay, good.
That's for sure.
Good. But let's go right into the first part when we're getting a meeting with M talking to Bond, and M's not really happy with Bond right now because he kind of, once again, Bond's kind of taking matters in his own hands, trying to investigate something that he's not supposed to be doing.
Well, right. He kind of went rogue going to Mexico City. And in this whole conversation, M is actually telling us that MI5 and MI6 are going to be merging. And that kind of plays into what happened in the last Bond film, where M was fighting to keep MI6 and the 00 agents. Now it looks like they're still trying to get rid of the 00 agents and incorporate technology as a surveillance. And at that moment, right when Bond's getting ready to leave, this new guy comes in named Max, who Bond calls C, because he's going to be in charge of the MI5 program. And they kind of have some dialogue, and Bond just doesn't.
He is not feeling C.
Him. No.
Yeah. He C comes in kind of a little cocky. He seems very confident, which is okay. But Bond was just not feeling him. He's like, you just look like a dick.
Also, Bond is taken off mission, and he's been grounded.
Yes.
At this point. So he's walking across this little
courtyard,
and Moneypenny shows up and has a box of stuff that they were able to save from Skyfall, which was his family home in the last movie. And he, instead of just taking it, says, "Bring it by tonight."
Look, at Bond was just not in the mood. He's like, "Look, just bring it tonight. I don't care."
Well, I think he was trying to get allies, and he couldn't talk there.
I see. Yeah.
And so Moneypenny shows up to his apartment with the box. And they chat for a little bit, and Moneypenny eventually gets him to talk and show why he was in Mexico City, right? And Bond turns on this video from M that says, if anything were to happen to me, you need to kill this Marco Scaria guy. I'm sorry, Sciarra guy, and not to miss the funeral.
Yeah.
So Moneypenny asks him when the funeral is, and he says 3 days in Rome. And so Moneypenny actually is going to look into who the Pale King is.
Yes.
So that Bond can figure out who the target was and why. And then at the same time, Bond is looking through the leftovers of Skyfall as Moneypenny leaves, and there is a document that shows that Bond actually was under somebody's temporary guardianship whose name was Oberhauser.
Okay.
And that's going to come in later on in the movie.
Okay. All right. So, but we also noticed in the picture near the document was, I guess you could tell that's Bond, and then by coincidence, there's a burnout picture of another person standing with them, but you couldn't see the face.
Right. It's one adult and two kids, like two boys.
Yeah. And so from there, we also noticed that Bond. Did he hear anything else he grabbed out of that box, or that was basically it? I thought there was one other thing, but no, I'm getting confused with
that
the
was
dog.
Basically it.
Okay. So, where does Bond do next? Well, he has to go to he got to go visit Q.
Right. And so they're riding a boat to go visit Q, and they drive right past the old MI6, and the guy who used to be M's right-hand man is giving us a little context, saying the old MI6 building was too damaged to be saved. They're going to demolish it in the next couple of days. Mm-hmm. So until then, they're building a new headquarters like right across the street. And so Q has taken up refuge inside of this old building.
Also, too, this guy joining Bond is also his babysitter, basically, too. He can kind of keep an eye out on him.
Right. Yeah, he used to be M's right-hand man.
Yeah, now he's also his babysitter. On M's orders, I'm guessing. Like,
well, M's dead.
I mean the new M. Like, the new M ordered him to probably keep an eye on him.
Right.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah. So, as they were walking in, the first thing, of course, Bond noticed is a nice new gun. Do you know what kind of gun that is?
I don't.
Okay.
It's but it is a bullpup style, so the magazine goes in the back.
Okay.
I don't remember the name of the gun.
Okay.
It doesn't really play anything.
Yeah.
Later, like he just picks it up and starts aiming with it.
Right.
But Q takes it away and takes him into a room where he injects him with a nano machine that circulates inside of his blood.
Smart blood, I believe they called it.
Yeah. So instead of there being a chip just under the skin, it's actually in his bloodstream and is pumped throughout his body, so they can't just take it out.
Right, and they said they'll know at any time, anywhere on the planet, like if you like where you're at, or like if you're like hurt, all that fun jazz.
Yeah, all of his vital signs, they can know them wherever he is.
Right.
And so that's as a result of him going to Mexico City.
Right.
You know,
that's a mean punishment.
So Q ends up after that takes him to show him a new Aston Martin, which is funny because he goes, "Oh, I got something for you." And he shows him the Aston Martin and then says, it was going to be assigned to you, but it got reassigned to 009 because you're grounded.
I hate when they mention other 00s. Like, 009, have we heard of 009 yet?
Right.
I don't think we heard of 009. We heard of 006. We heard of 002.
Yep.
002 died horribly in Live or Let Die. And I think 004 got mentioned. But, yeah, we have... Oh, and I believe there was a 006 at one point in the Pierce Brosnan one, but I think he died at one point. I forgot. Because I know...
Yeah, Trevelyan.
Oh, I'm sorry. Then it was 008. There was another person that...
Okay.
Yeah. There was a guy they mentioned that he died and he was going to take care of it. Anyways. I love when they talk about all the other 00s. I'm like...
And then don't ever show them.
Right. Now, wait a minute. Now, I believe in Moonraker, there was that room where they were all sitting down for a meeting or something like that, and they all got their dossier and like all the bonds are together. We don't know what numbers they are, but I think
that's true.
But that's the only time. I think it was Moonraker. I could be wrong, or no, it was For Your Eyes Only. I apologize. It's For Your Eyes Only, I think. But either way, I know it's a Michael Moore era, and you saw all the bonds all in this one room, and they all got dossiers. And like, okay, you'll never know who these Bonds were, but at one point,
Right.
you know, that was just interesting. Anyways,
No, you're absolutely right. I forgot about that.
so
Anyway, then Q gives him a watch and asks if Bond says, "Well, does it do anything?" He's like, "Well, it tells the time." and then he tells him that the alarm is quite strong,
yeah,
which is a euphemism for it goes boom.
right.
And then as they're walking, he notices his DB5 and that it's slowly being rebuilt. And Q mentions that all they had left was a steering wheel. So I don't know if they're fabricating a whole new car, but in Skyfall it was completely destroyed.
Yes.
So they're rebuilding it.
Right. And so from there, Bond asks Q to do him a favor and look into something for him.
Well, he says, "Can you?"
Or sorry, not look into something, but
can you help me, go invisible?
go, yeah,
basically. And Q was like, "Well, it's gonna take," because M's guy is right there. He's like, "It's gonna take 48 hours for the
the shot thing.
The nano machine to actually go into full effect.
Yeah.
But after that 48 hours, they'll have complete knowledge of where he is."
Okay. Yeah.
And so essentially, he gave Bond 48 hours to do whatever he needs to do. So it cuts back to.
It actually cuts back to the next day, right? Where
well, yeah,
Moneypenny gets like a little gift. She gets like a phone.
Yeah.
And on this phone, I think it was actually from Bond, I want to say. And as she was opening it up,
M walks in.
She plays it off like, oh, it's just a gift from from a past boyfriend or something like that.
Right. And then Q was actually walking into the office being asked about the Aston Martin DB10 that he showed Bond. And they go, and it's gone. Bond stole it. And
right.
It cuts to Rome, and Bond is driving the car in Rome.
So my theory for this is one of the cars that you just press the button and the engine starts?
Well, I mean, you still have to have the keys, but I'm sure the keys were in the office somewhere.
But the keys are on the desk.
Yeah, probably.
or like everybody else, they're in the car.
Oh, right? Right?
You're right.
So in Rome, Bond is observing the funeral. First at a distance, and then he walks up on it. And eventually he notices the back of this guy's head. And the widow is standing right in the middle while the priests are doing their thing. And this is really kind of weird to me. I'm not from Rome. I've never been to a funeral in Rome, so maybe this is how they do it. But as soon as the priests are done, all the visitors, all the guests, they all disappear and walk away, and it's just his wife, or the widow.
Do you think it's tradition-wise to have the widow have this one-on-one moment?
I mean, it very well could be. It's very odd. I've never seen that at a funeral
I guess
before.
if you think about it, for American funerals, I seen in movies and stuff like that, they at the end of the day, they'll cut to only one person left talking to it to put their final moments in. So the movie says. So movie world does when certain funerals show that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no reception after that.
It's just a little weird to me. So Bond talks to the widow, whose name is Lucia. And as he's talking to her, a guy shows up behind Bond and behind her. And Bond is basically saying that he believes her life is in danger.
Mm-hmm.
And that he's selling insurance, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And that, spouses of dangerous men usually find themselves in a lot of danger. And she kind of blows him off. And the two guys wait for her to walk off. And as soon as she
say they're bodyguards, right?
Well, I think they're hitmen from Spectre.
Okay.
Because right after this scene, we go to her house. Mm-hmm. And she's walking through her house, and she's pouring a drink. And there's one dude hiding, just waiting in the shadows in one room. and then another dude in another room.
Okay.
And she pours herself a drink, walks right outside, and is expecting
No,
to
you're
be
right.
killed.
Yeah.
And as she's wincing because she knows she's going to get shot, you hear two like pew, pew,
Yeah.
from Bond's suppressed PP7
Mm-hmm.
and or PPK,
Mm-hmm.
and they have a conversation. And he's like, "I have some questions I need to ask you."
And I like this part because she was talking about like, I don't have that much time to live. It's like, well, good, we have time for a drink.
Right.
Yeah. So, and then that's where they go into a little questioning because Bond needs information of a whereabout of a certain individual, or you need information.
Well, he wants to know about the organization.
Yeah.
And so she tells him that tonight at midnight at the Palazzo Cardenza, the organization is going to be is going to replace her husband. And she actually gets mad at Bond and says that because you killed my husband, I now have a target on my back. And so they end up bonding.
Mm-hmm.
And right before Bond leaves, he gives her a number for Felix, the CIA agent, and tells her to call him and that he could protect her.
Right, because this is the first movie.
It's the second movie. He wasn't in Skyfall.
You're right. This is the second movie. Felix is kind of not there. It's kind of a little disappointing. Yeah. And so what does Bond do next? Well, it's time to head to the Palazzo.
Right, and he puts on the octopus ring, and he heads to the Palazzo Cardenza. There's a bunch of really nice cars parked all around. He walks in, and there's like these guards, and guard asks him who he is, and he says Mickey Mouse, and then shows him the ring. And the guy like, oh, I'm sorry. And so Bond walks in, and he's on like this top balcony.
Yeah.
And he's looking down, and there's a long table, and there's a bunch of people sitting around the table talking business in different languages.
Right.
And as they're talking, Bond is just kind of walking through,
just observing,
listening, observing, and that's when this guy walks in with two bodyguards, and everybody stops. And he sits down, he's sitting for a second, and he says, "Oh, continue." And so they go into finishing their business, and then this guy asks essentially who's going to replace Marco. And so one guy stands up and says that he will do it because it's time to get the amateurs out of the way and leave it to professionals. And at that time, Dave Bautista shows up, and he challenges for the seats.
And who's his character in this? Hinx?
Hinx, Hinx. He doesn't talk except for like one word in the whole movie. But they ask him what qualifies him to take over Marco's spot. And he looks at the other guy and kills him with his bare hands.
I really like that. That's a good opening for him. I'm like, all right, I like this.
And then immediately sits down in the chair where the dude was sitting. And the guy who came in late starts talking, and you think he's talking to Hinx, but then he says James. And Bond is looking down at him, and at that moment, the guy looks up, and Bond recognizes him. And
how do you think go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no! He escapes basically, gets to his car, which leads to a car chase.
Do you think he got like radio in or something somehow? Like he said, "Hey, there's someone up there."
Well, when Bond showed them the ring, one of the Hinch guys was on a cell phone, so maybe he called.
Okay.
But what's interesting is this guy who is Blofeld. We find out later on. Actually expected Bond to be there.
Yes.
And asked him what took him so long to find him. So that already is like, well, that's suspicious. He knew he was coming and that he expected him sooner. So Bond gets in his Aston Martin DB10.
First car chase.
Yep. And Hinks follows in a Jaguar CX-75.
Nice.
So they're supercars. It's a really long chase
Yeah.
through the city. At one point, they're drifting. It's nighttime in Rome.
And there's no traffic.
No.
No, he's not this part of town yet. Because there was a little bit on the bridge. We're gone.
And Bond is using trying to use some of the gadgets that are on the car, but because he took it before it was ready,
Yeah.
The gadgets aren't working.
Right. And
Like
we're talking the back gun. The back gun didn't work.
There's no ammunition. Eventually, he gets something to work, and it's a rear flamethrower, and that gives him enough time to eject out of his car right before he drives it into a reservoir. And Hinks stops as he sees the car sinking and thinks that maybe Bond went down with the car or just got away. This dude doesn't talk, and Batista doesn't really have like the best facial expressions.
Right.
But it cuts to Bond, and he just parachutes safely down on the streets above.
Now, on top of that, there are some highlights that happen in the car chase scene. So one, you had this scene with this old man that was like stopping the traffic a little bit, so Bond had to deal with that.
He was in a little Fiat.
But one of the things that was during a conversation, he actually calls Moneypenny during this chase, and she identifies the Pale King as Mr. White
From Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace.
Yes, and it all comes together that he is now has to go find Mr. White.
Right.
And so with that leads right into our next scene, and that will be
They're in Tokyo.
Yes.
Oh, also, before we get there, Bond asks Moneypenny to look into Oberhauser's son's body. Well, the Oberhauser case file before and after his death.
Mm-hmm.
And she doesn't understand what he's talking about. And we're watching her do some research, and she's translating newspapers. And we find out that Oberhauser and his son went hiking in the I'm assuming the Alps, because it was in Austria, and both of them got caught in an avalanche, and their bodies were never the son's body was never recovered. Mm-hmm. But when you look at the son, it looks like a young Blofeld.
Yeah.
So Bond obviously recognized him,
Mm-hmm.
And so Moneypenny is doing her research and whatnot. So it cuts to Tokyo.
Now, I have one thing.
Okay.
And I have, this is just a guess, but Moneypenny was in bed with a man when Bond called her. And I don't know why, but I felt like the next scene cuts with it, because we start out with C. And I feel like C is the one that was in the bed with her, because I think it wraps up late. You'll tell me if I'm right or wrong later on, where I feel like that's why I think C was the one in bed.
I feel like they would have revealed that.
Well, that's why I'm going to say later on, because of the recording, and we'll talk about that.
Okay.
We'll talk about that, and we'll see if you really think that match is not whatever.
Okay.
So they're actually in a meeting right now, and C is basically talking about where should we be going for the future. Like, basically, technology is the way of the future.
He's talking to the Secret Service of 9 separate countries,
Mm-hmm.
trying to get them all to share information with each other and create one global network.
Right.
Right? The only thing is, every single country has to agree to join, otherwise it doesn't
Go through.
It doesn't go through.
Yeah.
So he does his little speech. At the same time, M's right-hand man is getting information about a car chase that happened in Rome that ended up with a DB-10 stuck in the water.
Yeah.
M gets a text message asking if Bond is in London, who immediately contacts Q, who immediately looks up Bond and sees that he's in Austria and 100% lies about it.
What a good friend.
So
what a good friend.
Bond is in Austria now, and he heads to this like I call it a cabin, but it's pretty huge. It's a
It-
really big cabin.
Yeah, and he actually came on an interesting boat, I guess. Like,
Yeah,
okay.
He came by car and boat.
Uh-huh. Yep.
And the front door is open, and so he's got his gun out, and he's just kind of peeking around, and he eventually finds this hidden room, and down below is Mr. White, and he looks really sick. He's got an IV and a bunch of TVs, like he's watching surveillance of the house and what's going on in the world. And Bond tells him that he wants to talk to him upstairs. So Mr. White sits down with Bond, and they start talking about really how to get in touch with Blofeld.
Right.
How to find him.
Right.
And White tells Bond that he can't do that. And so Bond figures out that he's got a daughter he's protecting. And so Bond says, well, if you give me the information I want, I promise to protect your daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. White says, what does an assassin know? What good is an assassin's word?
Right.
And so Bond hands him his gun and says, this is my word. Like, you have my gun. If you want to kill me, kill me.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, I got to find Blofeld. I got to...
basically, he needs to finish where this story began because more people are going to be in danger, and he wants to get this done. So, basically, Mr. White believes him and gives him information of, you need to find this place that is called...
Well, he says, try the hospital.
Try the hospital, that's what it is.
And ask her about La Americaine.
Yeah.
And then he takes the gun and shoots himself in the head.
Right. And so...
And then Bond finds a picture, he's searching his body and finds a picture in his wallet of him and his daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And he leaves. And then it cuts back to London, where M and C are walking through the new intelligence building. And M tells C M asks C if he's ever killed anybody, because C is acting like as long as they have surveillance and drones, they don't need anybody in the field.
Right.
And M asks him if he's ever killed anybody, and to know to be in the field is so much different than to be 100 miles away, because you have to be 100% sure that the person you're about to kill in front of you is the right person.
Right.
And so C kind of scuffs that off, and was surveilling Moneypenny in during his conversation with Bond during the car chase.
Yes. Now that goes into my thing. How would he get that information? Would it be through the laptop? Would it be through a phone?
We already showed at the beginning of the movie that Bond had a laser on a gun.
Mm-hmm.
It very well could be something as simple as somebody is following her.
But I feel like that would have been shown.
Well, I feel like if that was C in the bed, that would have been said.
I don't know. It could have recorded it.
Because it's never brought up.
Well, the only reason I brought that up because there's one part where C and Moneypenny kind of look at each other in a weird way. Like...
Oh, I missed that.
But when we get to that, we'll get to that. I could be wrong. Maybe she's just pissed that he's trying to shut down the 007. So, but either way, C managed to get the information, the recordings of Moneypenny and Bond about the information about where Bond is trying to do and where he's trying to go.
Right. And M asks him, he says, you surveil MI6 agents? And he says, we surveil everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So it cuts back to Austria, and Hinks is now in the cabin and finds White's body being pecked on by crows. And then it cuts to Bond walking into the hospital. Like he flew there on a plane. There's a small airport, which is going to play a role later.
Yeah. So the facility's on this top of this mountain, man. It's like it can easily tip over to me. It's up on this mountain. The airport is a little down below, and it's hard to see because we got confused later on. Like, how did this scene happen? But if you look really hard to the right and quickly, you can see a little airport down below of this little mountain and everything like that. Because Bond, that's what he flew in by. And so when he entered the facility, he ends up meeting Mr. White's daughter, Madeline Swan. And I guess you could say she is a psychiatrist?
Something like that. And Bond actually made an appointment as a patient. And then Bond tells her that her father killed himself 2 days ago and that he's there as part of a deal to save her.
And she just completely shut down and kind of like told him, you need to leave.
Well, right. But first he said, like, but not until he asks about Law Americaine.
Mm-hmm.
And she immediately tells him you need to go. Well, Bond is downstairs in the juice bar, and Q shows up because Q's ass is on the line. And Q and him talk for a minute. Bond gets him to
kind of stall because he presents him with a ring. He's like, here.
Right, just find out everything you can about the ring.
About this ring. And so, it was, I think, would you say it's more of like, look into this ring. If there's nothing there, then I'll come back with you kind of situation per se?
No, I think it was they planned to meet up anyway because Q probably, there's something probably Bond would want him to do anyway.
Right.
But Bond leaves and he sees Hinks. So he goes after Hinks, and as that's happening, Q...
Because Hinks took Mrs. Swan.
Right.
Yeah.
So Q just thinks he's going back to his hotel in a gondola, and everything's honky-dory until he gets to the top of the mountain, or the bottom of the mountain, and he realizes that he's actually being cornered. So he escapes by getting away from the guys and running down the stairwell.
Right, because tourists were coming in during the mix-up, and he managed to make it through there.
Yeah, it was really a waste of time to watch.
Yeah.
What's really fun about this scene, though, is Bond steals one of the airplanes and is chasing Hinks and 3 cars.
Mm-hmm.
One of them has Hinks and Swan in it. And so he's basically just trying to run them down through the mountainside in an airplane while they're in cars.
Right.
Which is kind of a reverse role that we've seen. Normally it's Bond in a car and bad guys in a plane. But Bond eventually takes out one car by landing on top of it. And then his wings get broken off, so he's driving the airplane behind them. And they hit this small village. Bond rams the plane into one of the cars.
Yeah.
And the other car rams into that car. And so Bond kicks open the door of the plane, shoots the driver of the car that had Hinks in it. Hinks is literally through the windshield.
Yeah.
Laying on the hood of the car.
Yeah.
And so they get away. She's kind of pissed off at Bond.
Yeah, I don't blame her. I mean,
yeah.
Within not even an hour, she'd gone through all this stuff. She's just not feeling this. She's like, no, you need to stay away from me. Just get away from me.
So Bond calms her down, takes her back to Q's hotel. They kind of talk out stuff, and she explains that the organization's name is Spectre. Q says that everybody he has dealt with since he became a 00 agent has been working for Spectre. In the meantime, Hinks kind of wakes up on the hood of the car and continues to go after Bond. And Swan tells Bond that Law Americaine is not a person, but it's a location.
Yes.
It's a place. So she takes them to Tangiers.
And before we continue the second half of this movie, let's take a break, and when we come back, we got a lot more to give you on this voyage as it gets pretty interesting. We'll be right back. Hey, this is the network creator Jeremy Evans, and I want to say thank you for listening to this episode of the show as part of the In-Game Boss program. And if you enjoy this, then you should definitely check out all our other great content we have on this network. Remember, you can always follow, subscribe, leave a comment, or concerns because we would love to hear your thoughts. And lastly, enjoy the rest of the show. And welcome back to the second half of Bond Never Dies. Jeremy Evans again, along with Travis Hanna.
Ba-da, ba-da.
And it's time to go find the L'American. And we find out that it is a hotel.
That's right, in Tangiers. And so we find out from Swan, Dr. Swan, that her parents they honeymooned there and they loved it so much that they went back every year. And then even after her parents were divorced, her father kept coming back there.
Mm-hmm.
And so that kind of tips Bond off as, oh, well, obviously he's hidden something here that's valuable and that will tell us where we need to go. And so Swan is like sitting on the floor drinking wine, watching Bond just like destroy walls and just tear through things, in which Bond does find a bottle of liquor. I don't know exactly what he finds, but he says it's really good and that she's missing out for not trying it.
Mm-hmm.
But it just looks like a clear bottle with clear liquid inside. So I have no idea.
Bad water.
But Swan is obviously drunk and she tries to stand up because she wants to lay down in bed because it looks like the sun's going down. So they've been in the hotel room all day. Mm. Stuff is knocked over. And
but no clue or anything where.
No idea.
Yeah, nothing to kind of give them a lead where they need to go.
And so Swan is like, she stands up and almost falls over and Bond grabs her and she says, you're not getting anything tonight. So don't even try. I'm not doing that. Mm-hmm. And she lays down on the bed and tells him to, you just sit there and keep guard. And so right. She falls asleep, mumbling some stuff to herself, and eventually he falls asleep in the chair, but wakes up because he hears a mouse. And so he pulls out his gun and he cocks it, and he's like interrogating the mouse jokingly, who sent you? And then the mouse like runs into the wall under a credenza.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
And so Bond is like, oh, there's obviously something here. So he like punches through the wall, and there's a secret room with old technology. There's pictures of Swan throughout her life, passports. So this was obviously a hideout for Mr. White. Mm-hmm. And Bond turns on an old computer, and there's some coordinates that Swan finds. Bond also finds a tape with Vesper's name on it.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah.
So it's like we don't ever see what's on the tape.
Yeah.
But Bond and Swan figure out where Blofeld is by using the coordinates, and Bond figures out that he was actually looking for Blofeld and couldn't do it himself, so he really wants Bond to finish the job for him.
Right.
In the meantime, we cut back to London, and M is walking into what looks like a council meeting that's ending. You know what? We need to go back.
What?
So when C first did his vote to try and get all the surveillance companies together or organizations together, one country did not vote to approve, so they couldn't go through.
Oh, okay.
And now when Q met up with Swan and Bond in Austria, Q shows them on the TV that there was an attack on the country that I think it was South Africa.
That's right. Yeah,
that didn't end up voting with them. So we cut back now, and that country is now voting with C.
Yeah.
So there's already something kind of fishy in that C couldn't get his vote. That country got attacked, and now they're on board.
Right.
So M shows up right as that meeting is ending. C got all the votes he wants, and he was put in charge of overseeing the whole operation. And he has already spoken to their top government officials, and the 00 project and MI6 are done. Mm-hmm. They're going to be out of a job.
Right. And M is not having it because he says that he will figure out what's really going on.
Right.
And so
it cuts back to Tangiers, and Bond and Swan are on a train. They share a room, like just like a seating room.
Very it feels like this whole sequence of the train ride and all we're about to reveal has a very strong from Russia with Love.
Yeah.
And so because they took a train too, all that fun jazz.
But I think they're also trying to do what they did in Casino Royale with Vesper, because this is like Swan is the Bond girl.
Yeah.
And they rode a train to Casino Royale.
Mm-hmm.
They had a moment where they talked.
Right.
After he won everything, they had a dinner. Well, in this scene, Bond is trying to show her how to use a gun because he swore to protect her, and his number one thought is if she can protect herself, that's a help.
Yeah.
Right? So she demonstrates that she already knows how to use a gun. She's used it once before.
But she hates guns.
And that's going to come up later on when we meet up with Blofeld.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of have some dialogue, and then it cuts to
time for dinner.
It cuts back to London. And
oh yeah,
Moneypenny or M is in a restaurant eating dinner, and Moneypenny and Q show up and are providing M with all of the information that they had that Bond found. So they have the location of Blofeld. They have everything essentially that's been going on. And M tells them that there's nothing they can do. Bond's on his own because there's surveillance everywhere. We can't say anything because that might tip off C to what's going on. And so his final command to Q is to terminate that blood nanobot so that they can't track Bond. And that's the best thing they can do to help him.
Right.
So then it cuts back to Tangiers. And Bond and Swan are in fancy attire. They're sitting down having dinner. They're having vodka martinis. And off the reflection of this silver thing on the table, Bond sees this big body coming at him. And it's Hinks. And he destroys the table. Him and Bond are fighting on the train. Swan tries to hit him with the stanchion. And he just knocks her out.
This is a hell of a fight scene.
This is a pretty cool. This is very reminiscent to me of Jaws fighting Roger
Moore's Bond, yeah.
Yeah. Because Bond catches him on fire. Bond's trying to hit him with a bottle opener, an ice pick or something.
Mm-hmm. And
he is just getting thrown through tables, through walls. They're in a kitchen at one point. And Hinks is about to throw Bond off the train, and in walks Swan with a gun, and she's shooting at him. Misses. In the meantime, Bond gets away. I'm gonna sneeze.
Basically, Bond gets a rope and he starts tying it behind Hinks's neck, really trying to choke him out, but it didn't work out so much that Hinks actually headbutted a canister. Now there is about 4 or 5 canisters.
They're kegs
sitting here, but at the last minute, Bond hooks the rope that he used around his neck to one of them, and he saw the last one, and Hinks' last words that he said to them, and his only word in this whole movie was, shit, and he flew out of the train.
Yep. So, we don't know if he's dead. I think 5 kegs with a rope on a speeding train might snap his neck. He's a big dude. We'll find out, hopefully.
Right.
Maybe he'll come back. But this, so going back to Casino Royale, after Vesper and Bond fight those guys in the stairwell.
Yeah.
Vesper
saw death for the first time.
They have a moment.
Yeah.
Right? Well, immediately after fighting Hinks, Swan is all over Bond and Bond is all over her. So I think they were trying to do the same kind of chemistry where we're watching these two characters get more and more involved in each other.
Right.
But I don't think it was done as well because it still kind of feels weird.
It is. It felt rushed.
Yeah.
And they haven't really known each other that long to do something like that. That's why the Vesper one's a little bit more believable because she's in a moment of shock and everything. She hasn't done this before. Now, for credit for Miss Swan, she seems like she has been, I don't know if she's been in a lot of action, but she's well aware of her surrounding and what's going on. So she has some knowledge. So I don't know if she ever been in fights or anything like that, but it shows that she could put up her own, her own what's the word I'm looking for? Put up her own. Basically, she could protect herself.
She can defend herself.
Yeah, defend herself. She could basically defend herself. But right here, just right to the breaking point of them, just that adrenaline leads them to this making love part is kind of a little out of place.
Yeah, because then it like cuts to the next day, and the train lets them off on this train station in the middle of nowhere, and they're just kind of waiting. And Swan, I don't know what they're waiting for.
I guess they were waiting for a ride to come get them or something at that time.
Well, no, because they look kind of weird. Like they're like, oh, there's a car coming, but should there be a car coming? And Bond is like, oh, that's an Aston Martin, or not an Aston Martin, a 1930s Rolls Royce Wraith, which goes along with the Spectre Ghost theme. And this guy asked them to get in.
Well, I think also on top of that, since Blofeld is basically can watch what everything is going on, he probably saw him. We don't know. It could have been from a satellite or something that could say, oh, okay, how did Bond know his location? We'll go pick him up.
Well, but what I mean is what were they out there waiting for? Or were they expecting Blofeld to pick them up?
I think he's expecting because, Blofeld being 10 steps ahead, but at the same time, he was going to those coordinates off that computer, right? So
yeah, I guess.
I think Bond just took a shot in the dark and it happened to pay off. That's what it feels like.
All right.
And so it's Bond.
So there's a giant crater in the middle of the desert, and inside the crater is like this oasis.
Right. And to your credit, this is dedicated to which movie back in the Sean Connery? You Only Live Twice. Because it was also Blofeld's hideout was in a crater / base.
You're absolutely
But this
right.
one here is just a nice place.
Yeah, this one's not under the water.
Yes. And
Good call.
Yeah. So
they show up to this base, and Bond and Swan are met. Well, on their way to the base, Swan kind of whispers to Bond that she's scared. Mm-hmm. And Bond like holds her hand, and she stares at him, and he's just staring forward.
Right.
So I guess they're kind of having a moment. But they get to the base, and this guy is like, "Oh, our host would like to have dinner with you at this time." Mm-hmm. And Bond is just like, "Oh, well, tell your host that we accept dinner." And this butler shows up with the silver tray and just sticks it out. And Bond's like, oh, okay, fine. Pulls out his gun and puts it on the tray, and it's like, be careful, it's loaded. And then they're taken to different hotel rooms, and there's a guard standing outside each hotel room. Mm-hmm. I say hotel room, but I guess there's just a bunch of rooms.
Right. One of the guest bedrooms.
Yeah, one of the many guest bedrooms. And so Bond's looking around, and there's an observatory, and there's a lot of gas mains and whatnot. Swan walks into her room, and there's a picture of her and her father when she was a little girl, and there's a dress on the bed. And the next scene is they're being led. Bond is in a suit, Swan is in that dress, and
that's a nice dress.
They're being led to this observatory looking thing, and when they walk in, there's like this egg shape, which is the meteor that created the crater.
Right.
Blofeld is talking about how it was an unstoppable force, and it hit Earth and caused so much destruction. Mm-hmm. And Bond says, but it was stopped. It was stopped right here. Kind of alluding to, I'm going to stop you right here.
Yeah. They were hitting blow for blow.
Yeah. So Bond and them are then walked out and into another room where there's a bunch of people working on computers. There's destruction on TVs going on. Mm-hmm. And Blofeld actually shows the video where Bond met up with Mr. White. And Bond is begging Swan not to watch her dad blow his head off. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yep.
And she eventually turns around and stares at Bond, and you can hear the gunshot in the background,
followed by a knockout to the back of the head. Bond.
Right. So Bond is knocked out, and when he wakes up, it's super bright. He's in a chair, and I just got to say, Blofeld in the other movies wore a white suit. He was very much like Kingpin in Spider-Man.
Right.
Right. Here he's wearing penny loafers.
Yeah.
He's
It is his house.
he's kind of relaxed, you know. There's not a lot he's worried about, you know. But Bond is tied to this chair, and I say tied. He's actually strapped down with metal shackles, and his head is strapped down.
Someone talked to Goldfinger.
Right. And so Blofeld is like saying, "Hey, if I damage this part of your brain, this will happen, and if I damage this part, that will happen."
Right.
And so Bond's arms end up getting like the chair takes his arms and puts them behind his back. And while Blofeld is talking, he's trying to get his watch off. Mm-hmm. And Blofeld, like Bond tells him, "Will you hurry up and start? Because this torture can't be any worse than listening to you drone on."
Yeah.
And so there's a little drill that's literally drilling into Bond's skull behind his ear. And you can see Bond seriously getting tortured.
Yeah.
And he does it to one side, then he does it to the other side. And on the other side, he says, if there is the possibility that if this goes through, that you won't be able to recognize anyone anymore.
That's insane.
Yeah. And so Swan like runs up to him after it's done, and she's like, "Do you recognize me?" And he's like, "I'd recognize you anywhere." And he hands her the watch and tells her, "You've got 1 minute." And so Blofeld is talking and she's talking, and she eventually slides the watch right in front of Blofeld, and it blows up, blowing him.
Dude, he flew.
Like, yeah, he flew way far.
Yeah.
So Bond takes the opportunity. He takes out some henchmen, steals their guns, starts shooting up the place.
Perfect shots.
Yeah, just
like,
bam,
holy
bam,
crap, dude.
Bam, bam.
Like, he was winging those shots, dude. Some of them were not like him focusing, but like, my goodness, he was getting them down in one shot.
I will say, I do like that he is running out of ammunition, because he drops one gun and has to pick up another.
That is, yeah.
You know, but there's a bunch of gas tanks, and so he blows one up, and him and Swan are on their way to the to the helicopter pads. There's a helicopter pad with like 3 or 4 helicopters on it, and Bond is just shooting guys at this great distances.
Perfect. I call BS on the helicopter part.
And they get all the way up to the helicopter, and he says it's not over yet. And right as he says that, like, the whole thing blows up.
Mm-hmm. See, I feel like Hinks should be coming out of somewhere at this point, but he's not.
Yeah.
But this would have been awesome to see Hinks come in and do this final battle before like leaving this. But it doesn't work like that. So after Blofeld's house blows up like Independence Day, they end up getting into the helicopter and heading back to London.
Right. And in London, M and Q are going to a safe house that Q wasn't aware of. And M's like, well, that's kind of the idea of a safe house. And Bond is there with Swan, and they're talking about how when Bond was talking to Blofeld, he got Blofeld to admit that C was one of his disciples.
Mm-hmm.
So he comes back to London. Bond is relaying all this information that they have to stop C. And so they're loading up. They're on their way to go to where C is. And Swan decides that she loves Bond, but she can't be a part of this world anymore.
I really like this part here. It kind of gives me a new, different way of a Bond girl coming at it. Like, you know what? This is not my world. I have to stop here. I got to go. Because no other Bond girl has done that before, right? Just like, I can't do this anymore. Right. I got to walk off. Most Bonds, they're there. The Bond girl's there to the end. They're the ride or die chick. But this one was different. She was like, no. So it was kind of cool. It kind of brought a little more down to earth realism to that. It's like, no.
Yeah.
I liked it. So
I just thought we didn't have enough time for them to actually build that relationship.
It was already going too fast anyways.
Like, I'm already like the movie is long. It's 2.5 hours. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of grateful they didn't.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm just like, oh, okay, bye.
Right. If they cut the other earlier girl.
Yes.
And brought her in faster, maybe this will be a more satisfying scene to you, probably.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, Swan walks off, and we cut to a scene where she like looks behind her on the streets, And then we cut back to Bond. Bond and M are in a car, and then Q, Moneypenny, and M's right-hand man are in another car. And Bond's car ends up getting rammed, and Bond is captured and thrown in the back of a truck, but M escapes. And then M reconnects up with Q, Moneypenny, and his right-hand guy, and they go after C. Bond is taken to the old MI6 building. He immediately kills the two guys that brought him there, and he walks in, and he's just kind of walking around. And he walks down into the basement, and there's a boat just chilling, but there's also detonation cord everywhere because they're getting ready to blow the building up, right? Well, on the wall, on the memorial wall that has everybody who's died for MI6.
Some of them are probably 002, 004, 006 in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody has written James's name out in red spray paint with an arrow. And so Bond is just kind of walking around trying to figure out where he's supposed to go, where he's going to meet up with this whoever it is. And eventually he gets to a room where there's pictures of his past villains and then pictures of Vesper and M.
Yeah.
And he walks into another room and he sees Blofeld standing there, and he shoots at him, and Blofeld is actually standing behind bulletproof glass. In the meantime, M and Q made it to C's office before C did and are working on shutting down his satellite network, his surveillance network, before it can even get set up. And M and C have some dialogue, and M basically says, "I'm going to take you in." And C is pretty frustrated about it at this point.
Now, with that being said, I want to say, if this is looking familiar to you, maybe I'm wrong, but does this particular scene where M and C are talking, did that scene remind you of the very beginning of Casino Royale when two people were sitting in the office having this exact kind of style conversation?
It did.
Leading to C, later on we'll reveal what he does, leading to the almost same results that you saw in Casino Royale. I feel like that comes in kind of a full circle to that. Maybe I'm looking too deep into it.
No, I really do think that this was supposed to be Daniel Craig's last Bond film, and that they were trying to tie it all up nice and neat.
Yeah. Okay. So you think that scene in particular was kind of a callback to wrap it all up?
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
So anyway, Bond is still looking, or Bond finds Blofeld. Blofeld tells him that he's going to blow the building up in 3 minutes, but that Swan might be somewhere in the building. So he can either escape or they can die together, basically.
I love the part where Bond, in that part, he's like, "You're bluffing." And I wish, this is my ideal scene. So for the movie, Blofeld was like, okay, you can believe whatever you want to believe, yada yada. I really wish that when Bond says, "Hey, you're bluffing," he just aims at his eye like,
right, because Blofeld now has a giant scar going across his right side of his face, and his eye is all whited out, so he looks like the Blofeld from the original Bond series.
Yeah.
But Bond ends up making it up to the top floor, and he can see Blofeld in a helicopter just waiting for the building to blow up. And he can hear Swan in a room, and he busts open this door, and she's in there, and she's tied to detonation cord, and he picks her up and says, "Do you trust me?" And she says, "I don't think I have a choice." And so they jump through this hole and into a safety net, and wouldn't you know it, they end up, as the building is blowing up, they make it out on a boat.
Yep.
In the meantime, C got frustrated at M and tried to fight him off and steal his gun, and C ended up falling to his death.
It's a big fall.
It was a long fall.
A big fall.
So we cut back, and M and Moneypenny and Q are watching the old MI6 blow up, and out comes Bond in the boat. And Bond has Swan drive the boat while he takes his guns and is shooting at the engine on the helicopter.
Because they're in pursuit.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, he eventually gets the engine to blow up, and they have to do an emergency landing on this bridge. And M and the cops show up and are like cordoning off the bridge. M tells the officer that he's with MI6 and he lets him through. And Bond has Blofeld like at gunpoint because he crawled out of the helicopter. And Bond is just like, kill me. Or Blofeld's like, kill me.
Come on.
And Bond's like, no, I don't think I will. And he and Swan walk off.
Yeah, it's funny because he's like, I'm out of bullets. I'm tired.
Also, we got way ahead of ourselves. We need to go back to where Bond is being tortured. Blofeld reveals that he is Oberhoser's son and that he felt jealousy over Bond becoming part of their family, killed his father, and disappeared.
That's right. Yeah, so that's a big important part.
Sorry, viewers.
So, yeah, because now this scene means a little bit more of that Bond can basically get his revenge and wipe Blofeld off the face of the earth. But he decides to show mercy for him. And this shows that Bond has grown as an agent to spare more instead of just thinking of himself.
Right.
So from there, Bond just, walks off, meets up with Miss Swan, and the MI6 takes him in.
Yeah. So like I said, I think this really was supposed to wrap up the whole Bond arc because we cut to Q just sitting by himself in his office that we saw at the beginning of the movie. Mm-hmm. Bond comes down this elevator and says, or Q says, I thought you were gone for good. He goes, I am. There's just one thing I need to pick up from you. And it ends with Bond and Swan driving off in the DB5 from Casino Royale.
Yep.
And Skyfall. So it cuts come full circle.
Yeah, so that's basically the end of this mission. And this movie is definitely set up to be the last one. So it's going to be interesting how No Time to Die is going to bring him back and then end it again, right?
Well, and what's interesting is they really had to pay, I think, because Daniel Craig kept turning it down. They eventually settled on $99 million is what it cost to get Daniel Craig back. So this better be a really good Bond movie because you can guarantee that's a majority of their
I know, like Bond has to come bring his AAA game. Like, you are the movie. Everything else we got to scrap.
Not to mention he got hurt while filming and they had to postpone a month or so.
Right.
So, I mean, $99 million.
Yeah.
How do you say no to that?
I know, right? Well, speaking on that, though, how do we feel about the mission? Did we feel like he accomplished the mission? Yeah, he did a good job.
Yeah, outside of the train station part, that was kind of weird. I kind of wish they would have cut some of this down and told us about Blofeld and him as boys.
Yeah.
Sooner?
Yeah, I wish they cut down a lot more fat so we got more time with those two because it took literally an hour and a half just to get those two to really talk to each other. And it took too long to get to that. If you cut off, I guess, like if you cut off or shorten it the plane part, you cut off
the funeral,
the funeral and the other woman. That could have been cut and done something a little bit different to get to that point. So we have more time with Blofeld and Bond because that's what the main movie was about. It was about these two people meeting through the history and everything leading up to this moment, but we didn't get that much time, and I feel like it rushed the end where Blofeld kind of comes off kind of desperate per se instead of being more cunning and 12 steps ahead of him. It was like, yeah, if I knew you were going to do this here, I got you on this other part, but you didn't get that. It was more of like, I made this contraption at the last minute to get you because for some reason I had that much time for your ride. I got
right. I got blown up and still managed to set up a whole thing.
And before you got back.
Right.
So is there a clone of me? I don't know. Now remember it. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so that could be a theory. But anyways, I think but Daniel Craig did a good job on this one. Besides Casino Royale, this is probably one of his best roles, best part for him in this one.
I still like Casino Royale better, but this is a good one.
Yeah. It's slow. This is the longest Bond.
Yeah.
It's about 2.5
hours.
It didn't need to be 2.5. It's long. So how do we feel about Blofeld? Christopher Walken did a good job. The problem is he just didn't have time to shine. That's the only weakest part. He just didn't have time to shine. He had it. It was his character. I loved him. Love everything he did for him. I love that he had this cocky I'm smarter than you attitude. I loved it. It just took too long to get to him. It was just too long. Hinks, still that too. Like, I feel like Hinks, I wanted him to come one more round with Bond. The train part was fine, but I wanted one more. I just wanted, come back for one more fight and end it with something with Blofeld or something like that. That's what I really want. What do you think of Hinks?
I definitely wanted to see more out of him, and looking at IMDb, I don't see that Batista is in there.
Okay.
Which would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
But Christoph Waltz's Blofeld is.
Yeah, we saw a little bit in the trailer.
So
there's a trailer, a small part of him. It looked like he was in the same contraption as Silva. And so, Bond girl, I actually like Miss Swan.
I do too, because
she did a good job.
I think she's realistic. She doesn't like guns, which we kind of skipped over again there. Blofeld kind of alludes. So Swan doesn't like guns because she killed a guy or shot a guy who was trying to attack her father when she was a little girl.
Mm-hmm.
Blofeld kind of alludes that they've met once before when she was a little girl, and she goes, "Well, I don't remember that," and he goes, "Well, I do."
Mm-hmm.
And I think that alludes to she shot him.
Yeah.
But overall, I thought she was a really good Bond girl. She wasn't anything that a normal person would be, which is what she was trying to get her life to be. Right. She just wants to be a doctor. She wants to help people. She wants to be a normal person. She doesn't want to do the cloak and dagger thing.
Right.
And I think that was done well.
How would you compare it to Vesper?
It's just a different scenario. She's obviously been around this her whole life because of her father.
Right.
She just doesn't want to have anything to do with it.
Okay.
And so Vesper was never exposed to any of that until that stairwell scene.
Okay. So with that, if I can compare the relationship with Bond, the Vesper one felt more believable.
I agree.
Than the Swan one. The only reason why is they just rushed it too quick because it felt like they just want to hurry up and get that done so we can get the Blofeld quicker. So they wrapped that up too quick. Because it would make more sense to me after they got out of that situation than you have the love scene and all that kind of stuff. But doing that before getting there, just it's kind of weird. It was kind of weird to me. The shout-outs for different movies was good. I like the From Russia with Love shout-out. I love that, honestly, on this recording, I didn't put two and two together of You Only Live Twice of the Crater scene. That just came to my head. I was like, oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I didn't think about that either.
Yeah.
But there's been a lot of homage in the Daniel Craig for all the other movies, and that's been kind of cool to see.
Right.
And I don't think it's anything I would have recognized had we not gone back and watched all those movies again.
Mm-hmm.
It would have just gone to the wayside.
Now, on the last episode, I put Skyfall as my favorite one out of all of them, and the situation I think on this one is, I think I put Skyfall a little bit above Spectre only because we had more time with the villain and we got to see him be developed a little bit more, and the fact that I really like some of the action scenes in that one compared to this one. The only thing missing was I wish they had a Hinks in Skyfall. That would have been nice. But it's tough. They're both, to me, they're really close to each other to me. But I think Skyfall, I think Silva stole a little bit more shine than Blofeld should have had more shine in this film. But Casino Royale is probably still the best one. If I had to pick, it is still the best one. But I think Skyfall still has a place in my heart. But that can all change in my top 5 going into this. So we just have to sit and really think about it, because who knows? Maybe Skyfall is not my favorite one is out of the Daniel Craigs. We'll just have to figure it out. But anything else you want to add before I wrap this mission up?
No, I just right now I have Casino Royale. I actually like this one more than I remembered.
Okay.
Which was interesting, and that I think that has a lot to do with watching the other Bond films, and getting that perspective.
So we both definitely agree that Quantum is definitely on the bottom of this
100%.
list.
Do not like Quantum.
All right. So with that, thank you so much for listening to our mission. Remember, we are part of the In-Game Boss program, and that we're a game and other variety show. So definitely check out all our wonderful shows. And you can find out all our shows on Facebook and Twitter. On Twitter, definitely type in @ProgramIn. And on Facebook, just type in In-Game Boss Program. And also, too, on the description of every episode, we have links. So if Podbean is not your thing, Apple Podcasts can be a thing for you. CastBox can be a thing for you. Spotify can be a thing for you. So you could definitely check those out. And, as you're listening to this episode as our last one, hopefully you'll be enjoying all the other Bonds that I have reposted. Because, the new Bond's coming out, and we want you to be prepared. We want you to be ready and everything like that. And that's why we're giving you this quick 1-hour journey. That's maybe about 30 minutes less than the movie length that we were talking about, but but we're having fun doing it. And remember that we're even more excited because when we go in our top, that is going to be such a fun topic. I think that's what we built it up to. We're like, we can't wait to get back to our top fives.
Right.
And so
I have to go back and listen. Like, so much has changed just watching all of these movies over these past couple of years that I really have to go back and listen and probably be disgusted at what I picked.
Yeah. And I might actually have to watch some small clips of some of the old Bonds so I can just kind of get that memory set of like, okay, this part and this part, right? And so, but remember, you can always leave thoughts, concerns, everything you want to know. Just leave it to us. We'll definitely read your feedback.
Tell us how bad we were and how bored you were.
Yeah, But hopefully, you maybe watched the movie while you were listening to us. That's what we recommend. Enjoy that and everything. But thank you so much, and we will catch you on our our pre-last episode, I guess you could say. Yeah. Well,
our first impressions of the next movie.
Yeah, and then followed by a couple of months down the line, our final episode, then our top fives.
Ba-da, ba-da.